Most people think they know the UAE. They picture Dubai's skyline, towers of glass and steel rising from the Gulf, supercars on 6-lane highways, the world's tallest building catching the desert sun. They picture man-made islands and indoor ski slopes and luxury malls the size of small cities. And all of that is real. But beneath that surface, beneath the oil wealth, the modern infrastructure, and the extraordinary ambition, there is another UAE entirely. One that predates the skyscrapers by 5,000 years. One built from date palms, coral stone, mountain springs, and the open sea. This is the country most visitors never find. We're going to find it. Our journey begins in the east, in the ancient city of Al Ain. And it will carry us across deserts, through mountain passes, along coastlines, and deep into the traditions of a people who built something extraordinary long before the first drop of oil was ever drawn from the ground. Al Ain. Close to the Omani border, in the shadow of Jebel Hafit mountain, it is one of the oldest continuously inhabited places on the Arabian Peninsula. Long before this country had a name, people lived here. And the reason is water. In a land defined by heat and dust, Al Ain had springs. Fresh water rising from underground, feeding channels that still flow today. Those channels, the Falaj system, are ancient. They trace thin lines of green across the desert, pulling groundwater through narrow channels, dividing it precisely between farms, palm groves, and family compounds. The system is so sophisticated, so carefully engineered for fairness and efficiency, that UNESCO recognized it as a World Heritage Irrigation Network. Walk beneath the palms of Al Ain Oasis and you hear the water before you see it. It moves quietly through the soil, passing between roots and trunks, cooling the air a full 10 degrees below the temperature outside. Thousands of date palms tower above the paths, their crowns closing together into a canopy so dense that the sky almost disappears. Mango trees, banana trees, fig trees, and cedar fill the shade beneath them. This oasis is not a historical exhibit. It is a working farm. Families still maintain plots here, still harvest dates, still manage water rights that stretch back generations. The knowledge of how to run a falaj, when to open a channel, how to read the flow, how to share it justly, is passed from parent to child the same way it always was. Beyond the oasis, the landscape opens and the mountain begins. Jebel Hafit rises 1,400 meters from the plain, its bare grey rock catching the last light of the afternoon. At its base, scattered across the lower slopes, are the beehive tombs, small, rounded stone structures, built around 3000 BCE. The people who built them lived beside trade routes and mountain water sources, buried their dead in groups, and left no written record behind. But they left these. 5,000 years of weather, of heat cycles and sand and wind, and these stones are still here. That is not luck. That is the extraordinary durability of a community that understood its landscape completely. Al Ain is where this country began. Not with oil, not with a royal decree, but with water, date palms, and people willing to make a life in the harshest possible conditions. Liwa and the empty quarter. Drive south from Al Ain and the landscape strips itself bare. The farms disappear. The mountain fades behind you, the road narrows. And then, slowly, the dunes begin to rise. You are approaching the Rub al-Khali, the empty quarter. The largest continuous sand desert on Earth. It covers roughly 650,000 square kilometers, stretching across Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Oman, and Yemen. It contains no permanent rivers, no roads for most of its interior, no towns. Just sand, silence, and heat. At the UAE's edge of the empty quarter lies Liwa, a crescent of oasis settlements that have served as a base for Bedouin communities for centuries. It is still inhabited. People still live here. But beyond the settlements, the desert takes over completely. The dunes here are enormous. Not the gentle, photogenic dunes of postcards, but massive geological formations, some rising over 300 meters from their base. One of them, Morib Dune, is famous across the region for its near-vertical face. Standing at its base, the sand wall above you blocks out part of the sky. The desert was not always this way. This landscape was formed from ancient dried seabeds, the sediment of long-vanished rivers, and millions of years of wind-moving sand across the Arabian plate. The dunes are still moving. Slowly, incrementally, but moving. The desert is not static. It is a landscape in constant, patient motion. And in this apparent emptiness, life survives in remarkable ways. The Arabian oryx, pure white with long, straight horns, is designed for exactly this environment. Its white coat reflects sunlight rather than absorbing it. Its body can tolerate extreme dehydration, surviving days without water. It moves across the dunes in small groups, and its presence in this landscape after near extinction in the 20th century is a conservation story that the UAE can genuinely be proud of. The Arabian sand gazelle moves faster, lighter, glimpsed at dawn, feeding briefly before the heat becomes dangerous. The Arabian red fox emerges at night, its enormous ears working as radiators, releasing body heat into the cool desert air, while it hunts through the darkness. For the Bedouin communities whose ancestors crossed this desert on camel, Liwa is not a wasteland. It is memory. It is freedom. It is the landscape that shaped their entire understanding of survival, generosity, and the relationship between human beings and an unforgiving natural world. That generosity still shows in the food. A Bedouin meal in the desert begins with Arabic coffee, bitter, cardamom-scented, poured in small ceremonial cups. Alongside it, fresh dates. The combination is not accidental. The bitterness and the sweetness balance each other in the same way this landscape balances harshness and beauty. Grilled camel meat follows, rich, dense, carrying the memory of a time when the camel was not just food, but transport, wealth, milk, and companionship. Rice, flatbread, lamb, simple spices around an open fire. The flavors are not complicated, but eaten here, under this sky, with sand on the horizon in every direction, they feel like something close to essential. Abu Dhabi today is one of the wealthiest cities on Earth. Glass towers rise above the Gulf. Artificial islands carry palaces and cultural institutions out into the water. The streets are wide, clean, and immaculate. But Abu Dhabi began as a small settlement on a low island, inhabited by the Bani Yash tribe who discovered fresh water beneath the sand in the 18th century. Fishing, pearl diving, and coastal trade kept the community alive through decades of heat and uncertainty. Oil changed everything in the 20th century. But the older rhythms survive. Nothing makes that clearer than the Sheikh Zayed Grand Mosque. It is one of the largest mosques in the world, and its scale is genuinely difficult to process. White quartz stone spreads across the ground and up the walls and over the domes with an intensity that, in direct sunlight, forces you to look away. There are 82 domes in total. The main courtyard can hold over 40,000 worshippers. The main prayer hall contains one of the largest hand-woven carpets ever made, a single piece covering nearly 5,700 square meters, produced by over 1,200 artisans in Iran. Inside, crystal chandeliers hang from the ceiling, each one encrusted with Swarovski crystal, gold-plated steel, and mother of pearl. The walls carry floral stonework in marble inlaid with semi-precious stones, lapis lazuli, amethyst, red agate, inspired by Islamic artistry across Persia, Morocco, and Mughal India. But the most striking thing about the mosque is not its size or its ornamentation. It is the quiet at its center. Despite the scale, despite the thousands of visitors who pass through it daily, the interior feels still. Prayer echoes softly beneath the domes. The atmosphere asks for silence, and people give it. For Emiratis, this mosque is not a tourist attraction. It is active. It is used. 5 times a day, worshippers arrive and continue a practice older than the country itself. The grandeur and the devotion exist together, without contradiction. Abu Dhabi also carries one of the most visually powerful of all Emirati traditions: the Al-Ayala. Rows of men stand shoulder to shoulder, holding thin bamboo canes beneath the open sky. The drums begin. Then the voices rise in poetry. Then the canes start to move, forward, back, together, on in precise, flowing unison. The motion is ancient. It recalls warriors advancing toward a battlefield centuries before the UAE existed as a nation. Today, Al-Ayala appears at weddings, national celebrations, and major cultural gatherings across all 7 emirates. Younger generations still learn the formations from older performers. The chants are memorized, passed on, kept alive. It is not performance for tourists. It is a living tradition, practiced by people who understand exactly what it remembers. Mangrove National Park. Just beyond the capital's skyline, the landscape shifts completely. The Abu Dhabi Mangrove National Park spreads along the coast in a wide network of green islands, tidal channels, and silver mudflats. Where the glass towers of the city catch the sun from one side, the forest stretches quietly toward the Gulf on the other. The mangroves formed over centuries where calm water slowed along a sheltered shoreline. Fine sediment settled into shallow flats. Salt-tolerant plants took root. Their roots trapped more silt. The forest expanded, tide by tide, until it covered a vast stretch of coastline. The easiest way to understand this forest is by kayak. Within minutes of leaving the launch point, the city disappears. The channel narrows around you. Sunlight breaks through the canopy in hard white flashes. The water beneath the hull is shallow and clear. The only sounds are the paddle, the birds, and the occasional rustle of something moving in the roots. Greater flamingos feed in the shallows, pale pink groups standing in the lagoons, sweeping their curved bills through the water in slow mechanical arcs. Western reef herons patrol the channel edges, stepping with sharp precision before striking at small fish. Crabs move between the roots and the mud at the waterline. The mangrove itself is extraordinary engineering. Its roots breathe through small vertical spikes that rise from the mud, a system that allows the tree to survive in waterlogged, oxygen-poor soil. Its leaves are thick and waxy, evolved to tolerate salt concentrations that would kill almost any other plant. And the forest is doing more than surviving. It is working. Mangroves store carbon at rates far higher than most terrestrial forests. They reduce coastal erosion. They absorb wave energy before it reaches the shoreline. They provide nursery habitat for fish that eventually support the wider Gulf ecosystem. In a city building itself ever faster, ever taller, this forest is the reminder that a modern capital still depends on patient natural systems it did not create and cannot easily replace. Siniyah Island, Al-Quwain. North of Abu Dhabi, in the quiet emirate of Al-Quwain, the Gulf Coast takes on a different character entirely. Siniyah Island sits between open water and the sheltered Khor Al-Baida Lagoon, a wide, exposed landscape of sand, mangroves, tidal mudflats, and open sky. It formed the same way as Abu Dhabi's mangroves: sediment, tide, time, and the slow accumulation of coastal life. But Siniyah carries something the mangrove park does not. Buried beneath its surface are the remains of a Christian community from the 6th and 7th centuries. Long before the modern UAE existed, long before the current borders were drawn, at a time when Gulf trade routes carried ideas and faiths alongside spices and pearls. Carbon dating has confirmed the site. Excavations continue carefully, documenting a history that most visitors to this country would never expect to find. Above ground, the island belongs to birds. Flamingos stand in groups across the shallows, their pink silhouettes reflected in still water. The Socotra cormorant, one of the Gulf's most important coastal species, gathers in dark flocks near the open water, diving hard for fish before returning to crowded resting sites on the rocks. Siniyah is being protected. Archaeological excavation, environmental monitoring, and restricted access during nesting seasons are keeping both the ruins and the wildlife intact. But it needs more. Stricter control of boat traffic, clearer buffer zones around nesting areas, and better public understanding of what this island actually holds. Because what it holds is extraordinary, a place where ancient faith, coastal ecology, and bird migration all overlap in a landscape most people drive straight past. Dahaya Fort, Ras Al Khaimah. In Ras Al Khaimah, the northernmost emirate, a different kind of history waits on a hilltop. Dahaya Fort rises above the plain on a rocky prominence, overlooking date groves, distant lagoons, and the Gulf to the west. To reach it, you climb through open heat and pale stone. The view from the top stretches in every direction: mountain, sea, palm gardens, settlement, and sky. The fort's architecture is severe and honest. Mud brick walls rise from the hilltop with twin defensive towers facing the surrounding land. No ornamentation, no grand entrances. The strength came from position, from sight lines, from thick walls, and from the difficulty of the climb itself. In 1819, this fort was the site of one of the most significant military confrontations in the region's modern history. Local fighters held the position against a British naval force during a campaign that eventually led to the Trucial States Treaties, reshaping the entire Gulf coastline. The fighters who held Dahaya lost, but the act of resistance is remembered. The fort was eventually restored and reopened as a heritage site, not to celebrate conquest, but to acknowledge the people who lived here, who farmed and fished and traded and defended their land with everything they had. Standing on that hilltop, with the mountains behind you and the Gulf shimmering in the distance, you feel it. The weight of a place that has seen more history than most visitors realize. Al Jazeera Al Hamra. Further south along the Ras Al Khaimah coast, a village stands largely intact that tells the story of what UAE life looked like before oil. Al Jazeera Al Hamra is the country's last preserved pearling village. It was abandoned in the 1970s when its residents relocated to modern housing elsewhere in the emirate. But unlike so many historic settlements across the Gulf, it was never demolished or built over. It simply stood still while the world around it changed. The buildings are made from coral stone, beach rock, mangrove timber, and palm fronds. Everything that was locally available. Everything that suited the climate. Thick walls cool the interiors. Courtyard layouts protect privacy and channel airflow. Wind towers catch the sea breeze and push it down into rooms that would otherwise be unbearable. The lanes between the houses are narrow by design, trapping shade through the hottest hours of the day. Walking through it now, the scale is striking. This was not a poor community. The mosques, the trading houses, the architecture of the homes, all of it speaks to a place that was connected to the wider world through the pearl trade, that understood commerce and craft and the rhythm of seasonal labor. The pearl diving season was brutal. Men descended daily to depths of 10 to 15 meters, holding their breath for up to 2 minutes, harvesting oysters from the seabed with bare hands. The work lasted months. The rewards, when the pearls were found and sold, sustained entire communities through the rest of the year. Al Jazeera Al Hamra is what that community left behind. Restoration work is ongoing. Traditional materials, careful surveys, guided conservation, salt damage is constant. But the village endures, quiet and patient, waiting to be understood. Al-Badi'a Mosque and Wadi Waraya, Fujairah. On the eastern coast of the UAE, facing the Gulf of Oman, Fujairah holds two of the country's most remarkable natural and historic sites. Al-Badi'a Mosque is the oldest surviving mosque in the UAE. Its age is significant enough, but what makes it genuinely extraordinary is its form. The building is low and humble, built from local stone and mud brick, settled close to the earth, with walls that feel shaped by hands rather than machines. Above the prayer hall, 4 small domes rest on a single central pillar. Their weight distributes outward through thick walls and simple arches with an elegance that feels both ancient and completely rational. Inside, the space is intimate. A plain mihrab faces Mecca. The surfaces are undecorated. Light enters softly. The architecture asks for nothing except attention and quiet. The mosque is still active. Worshippers have been gathering here for centuries, continuing without interruption a practice that predates the modern nation entirely. Inland from the coast, The Hajar Mountains cut across the emirate in dry grey ridges. And hidden within those ridges, Wadi Waraya carries something unexpected: fresh water. This is a permanent waterfall in a country most people associate entirely with desert. Water moves through the wadi in streams and pools, collecting in green pockets cool enough to change the temperature of the surrounding air. The walls of the canyon rise above the water, sun-struck and bare at their peaks, shaded and damp at their base. The rare Wadi Waraya orchid grows in damp corners between the rocks. The Arabian tar, a mountain ungulate, moves across the sheer cliff faces with astonishing confidence. The Blandford's fox works through the broken ground at night. The Omani owl calls from the ridgelines after sunset. This wadi matters not just as a beautiful place, but as an ecological fact. Fresh water in this landscape is not ordinary. It is the foundation of an entire local food chain, and protecting it means protecting everything that depends on it. Sharjah and Souq al-Asa. Sharjah sits just north of Dubai, but its character is deliberately, consciously different. The UAE's third largest emirate has positioned itself as the country's cultural capital. Not as a marketing claim, but as a policy. Museums, mosques, libraries, restored markets, and educational institutions have been built and maintained here with a consistency of purpose that is genuinely unusual in a region where development often moves faster than preservation. The heart of Old Sharjah is Souq al-Asa, a covered market near the creek and the heritage district, its lanes shaded by timber beams, its walls built from coral stone, its wooden doors carved in patterns that belong to a trading tradition stretching back centuries. The market connects Sharjah to its past through specific objects. Pearl chests sit behind glass, reminders of the dangerous diving seasons that once defined the Gulf economy. Incense and oud fill the air with a fragrance that belongs to mosques, wedding celebrations, and the interior of family homes across the entire peninsula. Copper dala coffee pots are everywhere, the ritual object of hospitality. The first thing placed before a guest in any Emirati household, even today. The food here is direct and deeply satisfying. Mashboos, spiced rice cooked with meat or fish, flavored with cardamom, cinnamon, dried lime, and saffron, is one of the great dishes of the region. The spices are not subtle. They announce themselves, then balance into something warm and complex. Lukaimat, small golden dumplings served hot with date syrup, are sold from carts in the market lanes. Their surface is crisp, the inside soft, the sweetness immediate. Sharjah understood early that modernity and memory are not opposites, that a city can build forward without erasing what came before. Walking through the heritage district, past the restored Majlis buildings and the shaded courtyards, and the Friday market still doing business, that understanding feels like the city's genuine contribution to the region. Ajman. Ajman is the smallest of the 7 emirates by area, but its coastline and its museum carry weight out of proportion to its size. The Al Zora Nature Reserve, north of Ajman City, spreads across a wide, tidal landscape of mangrove creeks, sandbars, and open lagoon. Over 1 million square meters of protected coastal wilderness, sitting beside one of the most densely developed coastlines in the Gulf. Flamingos stand in groups across the shallows. Egrets and herons work the creek edges. The water moves slowly through channels between the mangrove roots. By kayak, the reserve reveals itself gradually. The city noise disappears within minutes. The channel narrows, the canopy closes overhead. The light changes. Ajman Museum, housed in the 18th century Ajman Fort, holds the tangible memory of the coast before oil. The fort was built from coral stone and mud brick in the traditional courtyard style. Thick walls, narrow openings, a protected central space. Watchtowers that once watched for approaching ships. Wind towers that once cooled the rooms of a ruling family, living on the edge of a warm, dangerous sea. Inside, 3 collections carry the strongest meaning. Ancient pottery and funeral jewelry connect the emirate to burial traditions that predate Islam. Pearl diving tools document the seasonal labor that sustained this coast for centuries. The weights, the bags, the nose clips, the instruments of a dangerous and essential craft. The weapons collection recalls the political reality of tribal life on the Gulf, the constant negotiation between authority, defense, and coexistence. For Ajman's community, the museum is not history at a distance. It is their grandparents, their great-grandparents. The people who built this city before concrete and petroleum arrived to change it beyond recognition. Jaddaf, the Great Dhow. Before container ports and cargo aircraft, the Gulf moved by dhow. These wooden vessels, built by hand, shaped by eye, assembled from imported teak and local knowledge, were the infrastructure of an entire regional economy. Pearl divers worked from them. Fishermen depended on them. Merchants loaded them with dates, textiles, rice, spices, and pearls, and sailed them across monsoon routes to India, East Africa, Iran, and Arabia. The dhow was transport, shelter, and livelihood simultaneously. In Al Jaddaf, the old shipbuilding quarter along Dubai Creek, the craft continues. Building a dhow begins with the keel. Then the ribs rise from it like a wooden skeleton, each one shaped to a specific curve that will determine how the hull moves through water. No printed blueprints. The proportions live in the builder's hands, in the measurements passed from generation to generation, in the ability to look at a half-built hull and know whether the shape is right. The largest dhow in Dubai was built here by Majid Obaid bin Majid Al Falasi and his sons, a vessel over 90 meters long and 20 meters wide, combining traditional carpentry with the scale of modern maritime ambition. The result is extraordinary, not because it is large, but because it demonstrates that a craft developed for vessels of 20 meters can grow to 90 without losing its original logic. Tradition does not always resist scale. Sometimes it simply expands into it. Al-Fahidi, Old Dubai. Dubai is the city most associated in the world's imagination with the new. But Dubai Creek existed long before any of that. Al-Fahidi historical neighborhood sits beside the creek in the older heart of Burj Dubai, a trading quarter built when this city's wealth came through boats, pearls, textiles, and merchant families. It grew in the late 19th century, when Gulf commerce pulled people toward a natural harbor that allowed vessels to unload quickly and traders to reach the souk on foot. The buildings are made from coral stone, gypsum, teak, and palm wood. The lanes between them are deliberately narrow. Shade was not decorative, it was survival. Courtyards turned inward for privacy and airflow. Above the rooflines, wind towers rose above the surrounding buildings, bargeal, catching sea breezes at height and channeling them down into the rooms below. In a city without electricity, without air conditioning, without any mechanical cooling system, this was engineering for life. Walking through the district today, past the galleries and the small museums and the coffee houses installed in restored buildings, the scale of old Dubai is striking for its intimacy. This was not a grand capital. It was a working trading town. Merchants, sailors, pearl traders, craftsmen, the families of all them, all living within a few hundred meters of each other, all dependent on the same creek, the same tides, the same seasonal wind patterns. The call to prayer moves across the neighborhood every day, settling into the lanes exactly as it always has. The hospitality is unchanged too. Step inside one of the heritage buildings, and coffee and dates are offered before any other conversation. The gesture is small. Its meaning is enormous. Museum of the Future. And then Dubai places its other hand on the table. The Museum of the Future opened in 2022 on Sheikh Zayed Road, surrounded by the towers and highways of a city that has always been in a hurry. Its form is immediately memorably strange. An oval building with no columns across much of its interior. Its exterior covered in thousands of individually fabricated steel panels, each one fitted precisely across a curved surface produced by robotic manufacturing. The oval represents humanity. The empty space at its center represents the unknown future. Arabic calligraphy wraps around the exterior in steel. The words are Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum's, about imagination, progress, and the human capacity to shape what comes next. Inside, 3 exhibitions define the building's ambitions. OSS Hope imagines a future orbital station, combining space exploration with climate science and resource management. The Heal Institute explores ecological restoration, genetic preservation, digital ecosystems, interactive species archives. Tomorrow, Today presents real-world technology on the edge of deployment. Robotics, artificial intelligence, sustainable mobility systems that are not science fiction, but engineering already in progress. The museum gives Dubai a cultural identity connected forward rather than backward. It tells young Emiratis and young visitors from everywhere that the Arab world can participate in shaping tomorrow, not just inherit it. We began beneath date palms in Al Ain, where water still flows through channels 5,000 years old. We crossed the empty quarter, where the desert moves in slow geological time, and the Bedouin communities who know it understand survival in ways that no city can teach. We stood in the Sheikh Zayed Grand Mosque and heard prayer echo beneath the largest dome in the country. We watched men perform the Alayala, a battle ritual become a wedding celebration, become a national tradition. We paddled through mangrove forests that store carbon and shelter fish and absorb storms. We walked through a purling village that was simply left behind, intact, when its people moved on. We climbed to a fort that resisted an empire. We found a mosque that has been used for prayer without interruption for centuries. We discovered fresh water and orchids in a mountain canyon. We held old diving tools and understood what they asked of the people who used them. We watched a dhow take shape from a keel and a craftsman's hands. We walked lanes where the wind towers still stand above the rooflines of a city that used to move at the pace of the tide. And we stepped inside a building that wears the future on its walls. The United Arab Emirates is not one thing, it is many things, layered across each other, ancient and modern, desert and sea, humble and extraordinary, deeply traditional and radically new. The towers are real, the history is older, and behind the empire the hidden life keeps breathing. If you've made it this far, we'd like to take a second to salute you. We have many more videos like this one coming up in a new series, so we would respectfully ask you to like this video and subscribe for all the fresh content coming out from us here at What's Hot in UAE. See you on the next one.